I have to admit that when I was younger and growing up, I was not a big fan of poetry. Poetry, by its nature, takes certain liberties with language, some shortcuts, some rearranging of word order, using some expressive language that usually takes some time to get used to and takes a little bit extra thought to figure out what is being expressed in the poem. Now, poetry is a big part of the scriptures. That's one of the types of language being used in the Bible, in particular, the book of Psalms. I thought that today's reading from Psalms 36 through 40 offer us a good opportunity to look at a couple of unique things about Hebrew poetry. This first example is not something that we see all the time, but there's a note in my Bible, and you probably have the same in yours. In Psalm 37, there's a little letter. Mine happens to be a P, but you go to the footnote. It says, "This psalm is an acrostic poem, the stanzas of which begin with the successive letters of the Hebrew alphabet." So, verse 1 of Psalm 37, the first Hebrew word in that verse begins with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. The next stanza begins with verse 3. In verse 3, the first Hebrew word in that verse begins with the letter Bet, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Verse 5 begins with Gimel, the third letter of the alphabet, and so on through that entire psalm. That's a little bit more unique, but one thing that is actually much more common, and you probably recognize it even if you don't know what it's called, Hebrew poetry includes a lot of parallelism. Parallelism. That is, one half of a verse and the second half of the verse are set in parallel and often either mean the same thing or expand from the first line to the second line or contradict from one line to the next. I'll give you an example in today's reading, and that is Psalm 40, verses 13 and 14. "Be pleased, O Lord, to save me. O Lord, come quickly to help me." So you look at those two lines of verse 13, "Be pleased, O Lord, to save me," and "O Lord, come quickly to help me." There are three pieces. You might think of A, B, C, A, B, C. In the first half of that, it's actually B, A, C, and then A, B, C. So the second half is, "O Lord," that's the first part, "come quickly to help me." That means the same thing as the first part of the line, "Be pleased, O Lord, to save me." The next verse, "May all who seek to take my life be put to shame and confusion. May all who desire my ruin be turned back in disgrace." And Hebrew poetry is like this quite often. You get an A, B pattern or an A, B, C pattern. Sometimes you'll get an A, B, A, so it actually reverses order from one line to the next, but often to express an idea in more than one way so that it brings clarity to the word that's being spoken here. Because, in that first verse I mentioned, Psalm 40, verse 13, one half the line is saying, "Be pleased," and "come quickly," in parallel to that in the next line. And being pleased and coming quickly speaks to the fact that God, when he desires, he can act as quickly as he wants to. And to save me, to help me, in parallel together, it builds on the language so that it brings much more clarity. And I think that just a couple of examples of how God works his poetry so that as we're reading through, the beauty of his word, the beauty of the expression of the Holy Spirit's inspiration comes out. I hope that you're enjoying the Psalms, and as I do, much more than when I was growing up, I have come to really grow to appreciate this kind of poetry, especially as we see it in the Bible.